Hi guys, welcome back. I chose a little different angle today so that you could see a little bit more of the altar that I had pointed out in the last video. And if it is your first time stumbling upon this channel, welcome. My name's Naha. I live in Los Angeles and I am a teacher of metaphysics, of Hermetic philosophy and Hermetic science and magical arts. And what are the Hermetic arts, you might ask? Well, they are things such as alchemy and astrology and theurgy. The style of magic that I practice is Hermetic and Kabbalistic. Hermetic in the sense that it stems from the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, and those Hermetic teachings are outlined in books such as the Kybalion, which a lot of you might be familiar with, and Kabbalistic in the sense that it stems from Jewish mysticism. Now, when you merge those two aspects together, you have what is called Hermetic Qabalah. That's Qabalah with a Q, not Kabbalah with a K. And it is not a religion, however, it is a mystical philosophy, and it is the type of magic which was practiced by the occult order, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is an order from the late 1800s that originated in Europe and has really set the tone for and informed magical working groups ever since. And they created, through their secret society, a very elaborate structure of rituals which were later published and made available so that they could be practiced by people outside of that organization. And the original Golden Dawn organization did not last for many years, but it did splinter and give birth to a lot of other groups, some of which very much are still practicing to this day. I was fortunate to meet my teachers right around 2004 who were able to initiate me into these teachings. And now that is what I do, is try to pass on as much of the wisdom and as much of the knowledge as I am able to. So I want to share something very special with you guys today, and I want to give you a little bit more background on where this comes from. Now, Hermetic magic is based on the teachings of the man, the myth, the legend, Hermes Trismegistus, and that is a figure that has shown up throughout history in different traditions. Some say that he was a contemporary of Abraham, the father of religions. There are legends of him being an ancient Egyptian king. Others say that he was a messenger of the gods, that he was an initiator into the divine sciences. Some say that he was even the initiator of Pythagoras. He was an alchemist, he was a philosopher, and he was a teacher. One of the things that stemmed from those teachings was spells of protection. And it is from that that we get the phrase hermetically sealed. So something that is sealed in a way that it is protected, that it cannot be tainted. And you can also think of that with the sense of wisdom. Wisdom that is passed down from teacher to student, and sometimes forced to go underground for long periods of time, but eventually emerging. And as I like to say, the truth always emerges. The truth always does come to light. And thousands of works have been attributed to him, one of the most famous being the Emerald Tablet. Now, the Emerald Tablet was said to be found by Alexander the Great in the tomb of Hermes, and later translated by many people, one of those being Sir Isaac Newton. And what the Emerald Tablet outlines is something that is known as the operation of the sun, which you might have heard of as alchemy. Now, I'd like to read some of the Emerald Tablet to you, and it is not a long document, and I have a version of that here, and this is the version that you can actually get from the BOTA, and the Emerald Tablet begins this way. This is true and remote from all cover of falsehood, that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below. Through this, the marvels of the work of one thing are procured and perfected. So you've probably heard this idea before, as above, so below, and this is exactly where that comes from. It comes from the Emerald Tablet, and that is the idea that things as they exist on a higher level, on a higher plane, emanate and reflect in things on a lower plane. That the same aspects, the same ratios, the same movement, the same way that energy works can be seen on the macrocosm in the larger world as it can be seen in the microcosm. And that can be thought of your own personal body as compared to the world around you or to the universe. That you can go infinitely larger or you could go infinitely smaller, and that in either direction you see the same principles. You see laws of polarity, laws of correspondence, the way that things work, the way that things balance each other, and the ideas of cause and effect. And the concept of as above, so below really lies at the base of ceremonial magic. So if we can access things on a higher plane, and we can learn to be of ourselves on a higher plane, which is our own higher self, that we can allow that to trickle down to this mundane existence that we live in, and work to raise the vibration of the life that we live, and live a life of more balance and more capacity to be connected to something divine. Now, you've heard of astrology, and astrology is also known as the operation of the stars. And what the Hermeticists believed is that not that the stars and the movements of the planets were dictating what was happening to everybody down on Earth, but that their movement is a metaphor and it is an analogy for the way that things work and operate on a higher level, and that we can see those similar kinds of movements and relationships and operations in the physical world. In other words, we look to something beyond ourselves, larger than ourselves, in order to have deeper understanding of ourselves and to have self-knowledge and to strive to really get to the core of who you are, is what the alchemists called the great work. To dive within to the self, to refine the self, to find your pure essence and to bring that forward. And the concept of alchemy is the idea of turning something from a base material up to an elevated material, to transmute something, to take it from a lower vibration to a higher, whether that means from turning lead into gold, or the concept of philosophical alchemy, which is taking your own dense physical vehicle and constitution and your human mind and emotions, purifying those things, transmuting those things, and raising them up to a higher level. And a lot of that work is done through the allegoric process of birth, death, and resurrection. And when I say allegoric, what I mean is that is not a literal death, that is a figurative death, and it is a release and a letting go of dense forms, waveforms, ideas, blockages, limitations, and a rebirth into a more liberated, more evolved, more developed version of the self. Now, as Hermetic teachings and Kabbalistic teachings have merged and been brought forward, as I said, through the teachings of the Golden Dawn, we can trace that back a little bit further to where a lot of the syncretic aspects began. And syncretic means the combination of two traditions. And that is from the Ptolemaic period of Egypt, right around 300 BC. And it was during that time, during the reign of Ptolemy, that the Library of Alexandria was built, and Alexandria became the capital city. And we had the philosophies of the Greeks and of the Egyptians merging together, and many of the gods merged together. We already see that overlap between Greek and Roman gods. For instance, what the Romans call Mercury, all of the planets have been named after the Roman gods. That's why we have a god named Mercury and we have a planet Mercury, but that corresponded with the Greek god Hermes. Now, the Greek god Hermes is not the same as Hermes Trismegistus, but we'll get there in a moment. The Egyptians also had a god that corresponded by having the same kind of aspects. So being a messenger, being a scribe, being a god of communication, and that is who the Egyptians called Thoth. Thoth was the ibis-headed god, you see, with the long beak, also sometimes portrayed in the body of a baboon. And so what we see as Thoth in ancient Egypt, and we see as Hermes in ancient Greek, and we see as Mercury in the Roman gods, all of those combining together bring forward this syncretic deity of Hermes Trismegistus. Now, you can consider the fact that deities, oftentimes, if it is possible to find some kind of historical evidence for the fact that those at one time were living people who, upon their death, because of the legacy that they left, because of the legends and the lore and the myths told about them, they basically became these deified gods. And so that is kind of what happened here. What is interesting is that gods already existed, and Hermes Trismegistus became kind of merged with these larger deities. Now, I shared with you guys a couple videos back something that I was able to procure that was also something that's on display at the Rosicrucian Museum up in San Jose, and that's known as the Pythagorean tone generator. And that is basically a magical xylophone, if you will, and it is tuned to the notes that correspond to the 7 classical planets, and it has proven to be very powerful for our group ritual, our magical ceremony already. And today I have another magical object. I haven't opened it yet. I'm not even sure what to expect, but it is something that I do consider will be a companion to the Pythagorean tone generator, and something which I have gotten from my school and to share with my students. So let's open it. So this has actually come from Sevilla, Spain, España. I'm really excited to show this to you guys. I hope that it's cool. You know, that's the risk that you run when you open things online, because you don't know exactly what you're going to find. I've shared with you in other videos that, you know, I don't consider myself a New Ager. I don't consider myself a witch. Yes, I do consider myself a magical practitioner, but I like to go back in my magical source work. I am not looking for some kind of a New Age teaching. I am looking for an old, ancient teaching, and that is why I love Hermeticism. That's why I love Hermetic Qabalah, and I'm actually really excited because I'm going to have an opportunity to travel to Israel in this next month, and I'm sure I'll be sharing some of my travels with you guys. So this is what we have so far. Let's get in here. And some of you have asked me about my teachers. Even though I live in LA now, I met my teachers when I was living in Seattle, and they are very much still there at work and creating, and I will leave some links down below for you. And through one of my teachers, I was actually able to meet his teacher, which was his alchemy teacher. Now, this is a man named Robert Bartlett, and if you know anything about modern alchemists, then you've probably heard of Robert. He wrote, in my opinion, one of the best books to come out on the subject in the last couple of decades, and that's a book called Real Alchemy, which I will also link down below. All right, you guys, well, here we have it. Wow. All right. Can you guess what this is? I don't know if you can see this. Oh, there you go. It's the actual emerald tablet. Unreal. Now, the inscription that you see here is in Phoenician. And that's the language that both Greek and Hebrew derived from. And it is the language Hebrew that we use when we are doing Hermetic Kabbalistic ritual. But this is absolutely unreal. I want to take a look and see what it looks like when we put a light behind it. So I'm just going to use the flashlight on my phone. Wow. All right, that's pretty awesome, don't you guys think? Now, this was created by a Spanish artist. I'm going to take the light down. And along with the help of Dennis Hawk, who you guys might recognize as an alchemical author, to the best of their ability, they found that this is as close as possible as what the actual emerald tablet would have looked like. So I am just so excited to have gotten my hands on one. I will be putting this in the altar, but I'll also be taking this to the temple tonight to be doing some work, as I'm doing a path working into the Temple of Hod, which is the temple which corresponds to Mercury and to magic and to philosophy, the intellectual mind, and so much more. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this unboxing, that you've learned a little bit about Hermeticism. And if you'd like to learn more, I have lectures and articles and all kinds of things on my website, 22 Teachings. I'll link down below specifically to the 2 lectures, which are on an introduction to the Western mystery tradition and an introduction to Hermeticism. Those are available for $15 each. And I'll also put the link for where, if you are interested in getting this amazing piece, it is still available. You can still get your hands on one as far as I know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll have a lot of new stuff and new content for you coming soon, so stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.